in a deaf family. My mom is deaf, my dad is deaf, my mom's parents are deaf, almost all my aunts and uncles, deaf. And this usually prompts a lot of questions. I'm sure you got some. So you know what? I'm just going to answer the top 3 questions I usually get when people find this out, so we can just get that out of the way. Yes, I do know sign language. I learned how to talk because I'm not deaf. And yes, I'll teach you all the dirty words. None of us have an easy time navigating our childhoods. This is especially true when, as a child, you are forced to play a parental role. In the following story, we meet a girl struggling with this very situation. She is torn between her deaf parents and the need to grow up in a normal environment. A Blind Ear by Cambry Cruz. Now, when I was 7 years old, my dad took us to Galveston Beach, and I was riding in the back of my dad's Chevy pickup, and my flip-flop just tumbled out of sight, and I burst into tears. And my dad saw me crying, and he would have none of that. So he brought the Chevy to a screeching halt, jumped out, and ran across 4 lanes of traffic. Cars are swerving, dodging, people are screaming and honking. It was mayhem. And my dad, he got that flip-flop. He raised it up like a trophy, and he gave it back to me, and he said, "Don't cry, baby girl. Don't cry." Now, he was a superhero. And he was my dad. And I was his baby girl. He would have done anything for me. But he was also a husband. And not a very good one, according to my mother. After 22 years of marriage, she had gotten fed up. So her and I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment, and my dad got some crappy studio down the street. And I didn't really know about their fighting. Because unlike hearing parents, who might shout, and you would overhear shouting, my parents fought behind closed doors. So I never heard them. But I also didn't see them. But one night I did see them fight. Something woke me up, which should have been a signal that something was wrong, because, you know, one of those false assumptions about deaf people is that they're quiet. No, they have no regulations of sounds. They are burping and slamming cabinets and banging pots and pans. They are obnoxiously loud, and you just tune out these sounds of everyday life. But this night, it was like 3 in the morning, and something woke me up, and I went to investigate. And I saw the light on in my mom's bedroom, and I peered in, and she's lying on the floor, and my dad is straddling her. And his arm is cocked back, ready to punch, and seeing me in the doorway made my mom shift, and in that split second my dad hit the floor and missed her face by a fraction of an inch. Everyone's screaming and crying. My dad is threatening to kill her and then kill himself. So I race to my bedroom and I dial 911, and my first instinct was to protect my dad. You see, in a deaf community, a deaf man wouldn't know that the police were telling them to stop or drop their weapon, and so they didn't obey these commands, and they were shot dead. Please make sure that the cops know that my dad is deaf, and he may not do what they say, but I'll be here. I'll take care of it. But when the cops arrive, they don't care what I witnessed. They don't care what the 911 operator told them. All they really wanted to know was the status of my parents' relationship. Were they still technically married? Yeah, technically. See, the laws were different then, and what happened behind a family's closed doors was their business. All they could do was ask him to leave. So my dad finally says, okay, I'll go. What do you do after you've witnessed this? I mean, just go to sleep? So I'm waiting, and I'm trying to fall asleep, and that's when I hear this tremendous crash. And I leap out of bed, and I see my dad charging down the hallway straight at me, and he pushes us into the dining room and makes me and my mom sit there while he interrogates my mother about who she's sleeping with. And I can't hear him, so I just cover my eyes. After about a half hour, he decides to turn his attention to me. He wants to make sure that I know what a horrible wife she is. And he starts to graphically describe her sex life to me. Your mother is an S-L-U-T slut! And I just search his face for a sign of who. Who is this person? Where is my dad? And he's searching my face for a sign that I'm on his side. And I wasn't. So he grabs my mother and he slams her against the wall and starts choking her to death. And she's got her hands around his wrist just trying to get some leverage. And he's so focused on my mom's eyes that I get between their faces and I make them look at me. Look at me! It's your baby girl! And he just lets her go. So I race to my bedroom and I dial 911 and I hear the operator say, 911, what's your emergency? And my daddy grabs the phone and he slams it into the cradle and he grabs my mother by the back of her hair and has a knife at her throat. But 911 called immediately back. And I have a choice. I can either try this baby daughter routine, or I can grab the phone. But I'm the enemy now. He's back! And he knew. He knew he was done. And so he dropped the knife. And the cops were there. And one asked me to interpret my father's Miranda rights. So I start to interpret them. You have the right to remain silent. I discovered that my dad had been cheating on my mom. And had been abusing her the whole time, too. She used to make them fight behind closed doors, where I couldn't hear. wish he had given me this superhero of a dad. And that's the one I have to choose to remember. The father who would rescue my flip-flop.
Our final performance of the evening is Andy Robinson, who's going to be giving his speech to entertain. Andy has been with us for 2 years, and he has just been